the backbone of America.
All right, so we'll start about this port. Nick, thanks for being here, man. It really, I appreciate you coming out here, spending the time with us. You're also known as the People Displeaser. Tell me about where that name came from.
The moniker, the People Displeaser. It's both a joy and a curse, actually. Many years ago, I guess this was back in 2021, I was traveling the world trying to start my coaching company, which I now run full time. And I had taken a coaching course with kind of a, I don't know, one of these guys that says, build your coaching company in 9 days or less or whatever it was. And they taught me how to make videos, but that was really all they taught me. And I was really irritated because I'm like, this is stupid. I can't believe I paid all this money for this, right? I had no money at the time. And so I was pretty irritated about it. And I ended up getting mad one day, and I did that thumbs up that you see at the end of all my videos where I go, hope this helps. Well, it used to be just like me being a jerk. And that's where that came from. It was like a kind of a subtle FU to Preston Smiles on his team. That's where it came from. And then a friend of mine said, one day that it was very displeasing, and I thought it was really funny to change my name to the People Displeaser online because I talked about people pleasing a lot, and then that's just kind of stuck ever since.
The People Displeaser, though, I don't know why I always linked it to something like you got to do what's best for you, and if it displeases others, it's okay. Like setting boundaries.
Yep,
that's where I thought it came from, but I guess it was your frustration from this this company that I started.
That's where the name came from. The idea behind the channel, of course, is still what you just said, which is like, you have to learn to be who you are kind of dogmatically, and you can't really, you can't put your life on anybody else. You are ultimately in charge of how you show up in the world. And
that's a good motto to live by. If you're unhappy, the most common problem something you could fix is within yourself. It's not within your surroundings, because you obviously can't change any of that.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know why. I learned that early on. A lot of people have. It takes them a lot of time to find that out, but I don't even know who taught me that. But that was like an early lesson I learned.
Sure.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your personal journey. I mean, I heard some stuff. I don't know if it's true or not, but that you had overcome some serious stuff, and then tell me how that led to you wanting to be on one of these platforms that wanted you to become a coach. I mean, is this something you always wanted to do, or was it part of the journey?
So the coaching journey started for me back in, I don't know, I think I started coaching in kind of late 2009, early 2010. So I've always enjoyed coaching, and I went to coaching school, and I did all the things that make one into a good coach. So that's been part of my journey. But really what happened was back in 21, I had kind of gotten sober. I'd done a bunch of things and ended up getting into a pretty toxic relationship with somebody. And as that ended, I kind of decided, all right, I had this suspicion that I had not been living my life in the way that was conducive to what I wanted. And I had really kind of designed it around everybody else's needs and wants. And, through that realization, I started to really think, or I really started to think, it's like, all right, well, what does it look like for me if I just do what brings me joy, what makes me happy, what allows me to make the most progress in my life? And that was coaching. And I didn't really know how to start it. I didn't know how to find clients at the time. So I was just kind of posting in random groups, and then I'd get kicked out, and then I would comment on somebody's thread and they would block me, and, the kind of normal front end coaching journey. And then I started making content back in June of 21.
So not long ago. I thought you said you started in 2009.
Yeah, so I was a coach in 2009, 2010. That lasted until about 2013. Then I formed another company called Phobia that was around coaching and development of salespeople. So I still
this is one-on-one coaching.
The dating coaching was one-on-one. The Phobia company was one-to-many, and then this now organization, which is known as the People Displeaser LLC, I guess, or whatever, Displeaser Brands, or I'm renaming this company right now, so I don't really know. But
right.
So that is one-on-one coaching and one-to-many. So I work with quite a lot of CEOs and venture capitalists and doctors and lawyers and people that are doing very well for themselves financially, but tend to find themselves struggling in either their personal lives or in every area outside of work or even at work. It can be a problem. I'm writing an article now on the people pleasing CEO, and it's really enlightening to find out, to look back on my experience with these guys and see where the gaps in their happiness is, and where do they get screwed up in terms of their self-image, and it's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, I'm glad you mentioned a point there that was talking about finding your niche, not knowing how to find clients.
Sure.
That's what we're about. The backbone of America basically is about entrepreneurship. It's about guys like yourself that are beating the odds. You don't know where you're going, but you want to go places. And the odds are against you. You're starting with no money. Like this is just kind of like tinkering around, see what works. And we highlight successful stories like yourself. I looked this up online. I think it said something like you're among the 10% of most successful coaches in the world. You have over 50 million views. So you're definitely an individual that has made it work. And I like your story because you didn't come from somebody that had a lot of money, and you hired a marketing team and you did all kinds of stuff. So
Sure.
this is like raw entrepreneurship from the bottom. Let's get started. I want to ask you a question. Define your line of business.
Define my line of business. Well, I have three. So I have three core products. My first product is my one-on-one coaching product, and that is generally and inside of that line, there's two things. I have a very high-end product, which is usually where private equity guys will bring me in to coach a CEO down. So I'll be working with the entire C-suite to kind of restructure culture. And I don't do that in the McKinsey way. Like I actually go in and do work. Not the shit on McKinsey, but it's not consultative as so much as it's actually experiential. So we do quite a lot of workshopping and really defining, what are the core competencies? What can this company be the best at in the entire world? And then how do we, kind of create that pattern and take them where they want to go culturally. So that's one product. And that's pretty rare. Not, I'm a bit abrasive and caustic as a human. So at least my online persona is. So not a lot of private equity guys come hunting me down. But where I do most of my business is in the C-suite and sort of the high-end professional services, doctors, lawyers, accountants, and kind of C-level CEO, COO, chief operations or chief financial officers and those types of guys. And that's a one-on-one 6-month coaching product. And it's a really powerful product. It's probably my favorite one to do because I get a chance to really go deeper with people that are doing meaningful work and that have impact on teams and have impact on other people. And that part's like really fun for me because it's really juicy and exciting. And then below that, I have my workshops, which are my 1-2 sort of, I'd say multiple, not many, which is, kind of a 14-person intensive that goes 2 or 3 days, usually 3, depending on what we're talking about, which is really a deep dive into fear and limiting beliefs and how do you overcome the things that are holding you back from being who you want to be. And that is my favorite product of all because we really get to see people like the light bulb come on and they get excited about what they're going to do next. And the last one I did, one of the guys left, and 2 days later he sent me a text message, and he said, "I just got a 5 times pay raise from my boss."
Wow.
And I was like, "Well, how'd that happen?" He goes, "Well, I just walked up to him and said, 'You're not paying me enough money.'" Oh, so and then I had another guy in the same class that had been toying with the idea of applying to be the CEO of his company, and he went ahead and did that, and it looks like he's going to get that role. And then I had another woman in that course that was like trying to promote inside of a private sector or a public sector company or a public sector organization, and she got the promotion. And like I had one person that just was able to quit smoking, and I'm like these are really powerful moments for people. And then right below that is my my membership program, which is launching here in the next few days. Actually, I'm retooling a lot of my company. Um, and what it's based on is the idea that most people want to grow, but they forget.
They forget what?
They forget they want to grow.
Wow.
So what happens is they sign up for a workshop or they sign up for a class, right? Or they sign up for an online course and they never take it. Or they'll get halfway through it and they'll get busy.
They quit.
Or right, and they quit. So I think what we're seeing is a shift in the market as well on this, is where people are trying to monetize courses, or not courses, but communities, right? And I think there's some value in that, but I think the challenge is I don't know that they know that why they're doing it beyond monetary gain. And so when I think of what I can be the best in the world at, it is helping people accelerate piece by piece, not through these kind of massive actions all the time, right? Like a big workshop that you do for 3 days is really cool. But if you don't stay in touch with that group, if you don't stay in touch with the growth, then it'll go away. So that's why
Small
I'm
steps.
creating, right? That's why I'm creating the membership program. I'm not calling it a community, I'm calling it a membership program, because we're going to text you every other day. We're going to bother you to do the work. We're going to let you know when stuff is coming up. We're going to send you journaling prompts. We're doing all this not because I think it adds value. It does add value to the program, but my passion isn't in that. I don't give. I mean, I'll charge nothing for this if I have to get people involved, because I want to see people grow and I want to see what they're capable of. And through that, I'll be able to monetize my life and it'll be fine. I'm not worried about it. The big thing is how do we show people that growth is actually really simple, but sometimes it's really hard. And that's okay. But most people, again, and I think this was Alex Hermosi who said it first, most people don't need to be taught, they need to be reminded. So we're going to remind people.
Yeah, I got it. Okay. And let me ask you, out of these three segments that you shared with me, how much revenue comes from each, or what percentage of your income comes from each one?
My top product presently is my one-on-one CEO kind of level coaching, my executive coaching
Uh,
product.
so I imagine that's
Secondary,
for I mean, those are the guys with the money, you know? But I imagine that's probably the one that least satisfies you, like as far as like the impact. I mean, they're not going to open up to you. They're not going to tell you, or do they? You know, I always think like a business environment is more reserved. You know, it's more like this is a professional
sure.
environment. I'm not gonna, you know, that's what I'm thinking.
Most executives that work with me, here's the thing that you have to understand about coaching. Um, I love that product because of how deep we get to go. So I take people to places they don't know are there. And it's both a result of their willingness and my ability, right? Like I have a very high end acumen around how to take people to the dark place, and let them feel it and get through it. But there has to be a really strong willingness and character to be able to do that kind of work with somebody. And I usually won't take a client unless I see that. So
What the
I
willingness?
don't, yeah, I don't take on clients that aren't willing to get into the weeds emotionally, because that's where all the work gets done, whether it's in your business, whether it's in your marriage, whether it's,
Yeah.
there's a litany of ways that we show up in the world. And, I turn down a lot more than I take. I only take 10 clients in that product a year. And that number is going down. So, um, and the reason for that is because I want men working with me specifically, and I haven't had any female clients on that side, and I don't know that I ever will, but I hope to. But men working with me on that product, what I really want to see is exponential growth in every area of your life. It's not just about like, okay, we're going to solve a business problem. I'm good at that. Like I'm really creative. I'm great in organizational strategy. I understand compensation. Like I'm good at stuff like that, but that's not what I care about.
Got
I care about seeing these men fulfilled and happy, and drawing new information and new ways of being from exciting parts of their lives.
So the majority of your revenue is coming from these 10 individuals annually. What
That's
else?
correct.
What else? What's the other segment of it?
Um,
The two others that you mentioned, I mean, are they
they go in
10% of your
order.
revenue?
So they go in order. So I'd say 60, 30, probably 20, or 60, 20, 20 is probably more appropriate, like 60%, 20%, 20%. The goal is to bring the memberships up to about 35%, and the workshop should be about 35%,
So even
because they're
amount.
slightly lower. They're slightly lower bandwidth for me, and don't require kind of as much time. And
All right.
then my Dominion product, which is a new one that's going to be kind of changing the way that I do my one-on-one coaching, is going to be very cool.
Got
We'll
it.
have a
And the
program
demographic,
product.
is it, we talking about, 50 plus year olds, men, women? What's the ratio? Tell me, who's your average client?
Probably in my one-on-one clients, it's men with a net worth over 5 million, right around 35 plus
Okay.
in age. Generally speaking, I'd say 3 million is probably the lowest I see on that. I've had one person, spend the big money once, that was not worth that, and now he's worth $1 million. It's fascinating that most of the time when I work with somebody, their income increases, not decreases. Not because I do anything special, but because I get them out of their own way. Um, so, overall, it's about that. I'd say I have a lot of success in that world. So
Got it.
40 plus is where I'm very, very successful, with men. And then kind of that 35 plus is also very successful, but they're a little harder to find, I think, because I think you hit your financial stride around 45, 50 is usually when guys really hit the number. And then if they're in that kind of people pleaser world, or they have a problem with external validation, or whatever it is, they'll very often show up in my frame, about the time they get tired of talking to a therapist about
Got
their
it.
feelings.
Now, is this niche for coaching? Is it a growing business? Are you seeing that more people need this kind of help? There's more chaos out there, or do you think that a lot of this, maybe a lot of online help, there's a lot more coaching going on these days? Are things getting better, or do you see them not really improving? There's more dysfunction.
Um, I'd say that societally it's probably getting worse. So I don't see that I'm going to run out of clients anytime soon.
And there's no change of
So
business, huh? Nothing's taking over for
right.
this.
So hang on one second.
Take it, no
um,
rush.
There we go. My cat was yelling, so I was asking my fiance to come let her out. Um, there she goes. All right. So I see it getting worse. Social media has really created a gap in what connection means, very specifically, for men, and I think that problem isn't going away anytime soon. So, as we kind of see that men want to grow and change, it becomes an issue of, how do I do that meaningfully? And none of the problems that we have psychosocially, um, you know, or in our interpersonal relationships, are created in a vacuum. Um, and that's one of the things I teach a lot is, um, when you realize that you're not alone in this, and um, that a lot of people are going through it, then you can start to build community around that. And people starting to say, okay, enough. I don't need to be on Instagram all the time photographing my vacations. I don't need to have, clout, to be happy. Um, and, when people get off those apps, it's funny, because I make my entire living on Instagram and social media. But I think it's the bane of human existence. I think it's killing people more than it's helping. And I think, it's created a comparative culture where nobody's ever going to be good enough, and you can never measure up. And that's part of the reason, we talked a little bit about my move to Portugal, is that I've noticed that, um, there's still very much a community feeling there, where it's a village. And I think we've lost that village mentality in the West.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. So what we've talked about, the industry's there. It's not going away. There's nothing that's going to be taking your place, I guess. And you could do it from any part of the world, right? I mean,
That's
you can
correct.
have virtual conversations. So man, you're free to you're what a lot of people call could be a digital nomad.
I was for many years.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so my next question is, okay, so 2021, you get started in the social media thing. You obviously don't, I could tell you're not a big fan of social media, but it starts growing on you. How does this happen? I mean,
Oh God.
Were you surprised? I mean, was this the plan?
I mean, it was the hope. I don't know that it was the plan. Um, you know, so I come from, you've read some of my story. I've had a pretty gnarly background. I was addicted to all kinds of craziness, and I had a pretty awful growing up. And so, when you're coming from that frame of mind and you start a social media channel, you're always telling yourself you're not good enough. And then you're proving it every day, right? Because you post it, nobody watches it. And you post it, nobody watches it. You post it, nobody watches it. You do this for months and months and months. But it was December 3rd of the first time it went viral was December 3rd of 21.
Okay, so same year you started.
Yep. So I started in June. I was kind of making videos, but not really knowing what I was doing. I was filming them wrong, and it was a disaster. Excuse me. And so I'm filming all these videos, and it was kind of wrong all the time. And I hired a coach. His name is Stone Frederickson. Now he's a 21-year-old kid, to help me learn how to TikTok right, how to do that right. And he did a little thing on my channel, and we spent 30 minutes together, and I think it was $35. He's a really young friend of mine now. He and I talk every week, and I love him to death. So Stone, if you're watching, I love you. But the coaching he gave me was helpful, and he was like, "You need to post 3 videos a day." And I was like, "God, that's so much." And he's like, "But that's what it's going to take, right? It's 3 videos a day. You need to be doing 90 pieces of content." Or no, yeah, it's a 90 to 93 pieces of content every single month. And I was like, I mean, okay, I'll give it a whirl. I'll try. So I did for 3 months. So it was July. I met him in September, October, November, early December. So early September, I met him, started recording 3 a day. And I think I'd done 180 or 190 videos when I put up this video called The Real Cost of People Pleasing, Volume 15. It was a 62-part series, by the way. So I put up The Real Cost of People Pleasing, Volume 15, and it blew up. And by blew up, I mean, it was like I had not had anything get more than 1,000 views. And I thought that was like a really good day.
Right.
This video, I posted it. I want to say I posted it in the morning, or maybe it was in the evening of the 3rd. I'd have to go back and look, but I posted it, and so it was in the evening, and I went to bed, and I forgot about it because I didn't usually check. I usually posted my videos, so I'd record and post it at night.
You're number 92. Why would you?
Right. So I didn't pay much attention to it, and I put it up. And I get up in the morning. I didn't check my channels. I was doing a kind of a consulting coaching gig down in Florida at the time. I was in West Palm Beach, and I drive their little crappy company car to the office, and we have lunch and we do the thing. And I was going through some things in my personal life that were making me crazy, and so I was kind of sad, and I was a little lonely, and whatever. Right. Well, I get done with lunch, and I open my phone, and it was like, "You have 100,000 views," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." And I had like, I went from having 1,500 followers to having like 15,000. I was like, "That's a big day. That's a win, right?"
Man, take it.
Well, it went crazy. I mean, it went like crazy over the next 24 hours and got up to like 1 million views. And so I went from having 15,000 followers that day to like 75,000 overnight. And that was just TikTok, and I didn't really do anything with Instagram or Facebook at that time because I was kind of frustrated with it. And I focused all my energy on these TikTok vids. And so I kind of ran that train until it got to about 230. That's where TikTok remains still, by the way. It doesn't grow, it doesn't shrink. It just kind of stays the same for me. I don't know if that's just because I'm too old for the channel or whatever, but I don't care. It's fun for me, and I love the people there. And then I guess in 23, I posted on Instagram. I started repurposing my content over, and I reposted a video that had gone viral on TikTok, just curious what would happen. And kind of the same story. It was like I posted it at like 6:30 at night. We went out and had a margarita, went to bed, and I woke up in the morning, and it was like like with Instagram, I had so few followers, I still had my notifications on. And I woke up with 10,000 notifications. I was like,
So
what in the
this
absolute?
particular video was like the golden goose, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it just kept winning, right?
What
And then
was
it,
unique about it? I mean, was it the same thing, or you think it was like, no, this was a little different?
so the first one that went viral doesn't do well anymore. Like it never does well anymore. I don't know why. I think it just doesn't make sense to people or something. So it just doesn't hit the way it used to. Um, the one I posted in 23 on Instagram had done really well on TikTok at one point. I had reposted it through a company called repurpose.io. And by the way, if you're repurposing content, don't do that way through Instagram. It gets pissed off and it won't show you your stuff. But so I'd kind of done all that. And this video, I don't know why, but I can still post it and it will still do well. And it was just about boundaries and why setting them wasn't working. And that was pretty much it. Like, so it's fascinating what the algorithms like and what they don't. Right now, the algorithms don't really care much for, at least as I'm seeing it, and a lot of my friends are experiencing it, is kind of the personal growth content. It's really all about rage bait right now.
About what?
Rage bait,
I see.
making people mad so they'll click and talk. So we've got a very angry world, and that's not uncommon in the administration that we're
Maybe the
currently in.
algorithm.
That was happening back then too. So
Do you think that maybe it's not the algorithm that pushes that, but a video that gets that kind of I guess reaction from individuals, and they start going in there and posting, and then the algorithm will say, well, people like this, then let me boost it.
well, it's that's exactly what it is. Is people are pissed off and they'd rather. And so here's something that's here's a bit of rage bait that you can use if you want to make a clip out of this. Um, it's a hell of a lot easier to be pissed off than it is to be effective.
Positive.
And not even positive. Net neutral is fine. Being effective is really challenging. Being pissed off is easy because then you can blame everybody else. And I think whether you're on the right or whether you're on the left political spectrums in this country, you're just engaging in some sort of victimhood every time you get mad about something somebody else is doing. You go out and you see the protests and those things, and I see the value in it, but I don't really also is like, if you're going to do something, do something. Maybe somebody should run for office. Maybe we should stop electing 80-year-old, billionaires to run our country. Maybe it's time for somebody with who doesn't have to worry about being senile to take the reins of the single largest organization on planet Earth.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
um, and and I don't want to get too political because it's not what your show's about, but I think that it's also a big problem in entrepreneurship right now. Is people are like, well, I can't do it because of this, or I can't do it. I don't have this thing, or I don't have that thing. Well, you know what? I walked myself out of hell by myself to become who I am,
Right.
and I think more people need to focus less on how angry they are and focus a hell of a lot more on how effective they are. Because if you
Yeah.
can just stop doing things that don't serve you, you can actually accelerate quite a lot.
That's why I think your channel's so important. I mean, you're helping individuals realize that if they're just going to be complaining about what's going on in the world, it's a never-ending story, you know? Once you can be calm on the inside, that's where you realize, I mean, the building could be on fire and you're calm, you know? And you understand that you can only change certain things, and you're not gonna let it ruin your life. But so tell me, what do you mostly do nowadays? I mean, how many videos are you posting? Are you still active? I mean, are you still marketing yourself, or at this point you're just kind of like, this is just on autopilot?
I'm still pretty active. I will admit that this year I've been a bit on the lazy is probably not the right word. I've been pretty tired. I mean, I've been posting content every day for, you know, 4 years,
Sheesh,
and
okay.
that's a lot, right?
You enjoy it, or at first you did because you saw maybe the dream is kind of dead right now. I mean, is that the case or no?
The dream isn't dead. I'm at the hard part where you have to change. So this is the part of entrepreneurship that nobody wants to talk about, right? Is the beginning is usually inspiring in some way, right? Like I decided to start a company living in an Airbnb in Huntington Beach, California. I realized I couldn't stay in the United States and afford to do that. So I picked up and moved to Costa Rica and Mexico and Panama and Colombia. And I was gone for 2.5 years, you know, living in places that were so cheap to live because that's what I could do, right? That's how I could create videos and have impact. And not for nothing, I learned how to surf and I learned how to tango and I had amazing wine and I ate great steak and it was all cheap and it
Incredible
was fun. And
experience.
right, it was incredible. And that part's like fun to talk about, right? That's where all the excitement is. And then, I moved back to California and I made videos there for a long time and I was really happy. And then I moved to Denver where I am now and that's fine. And, I'm going to move again here soon. Um, but the part that nobody wants to talk about is this kind of middle part of the road.
The what? I'm sorry.
And so it's the middle part of the road. It's the
Okay.
fork, right? Where you decide which direction you're going to go. Am I going to kind of coast at this point, go down the hill, or am I going to continue to rise?
Yeah.
And the challenge with the rise, or at least the second part of that, is it's scarier than the beginning because in the beginning you have nothing to lose.
I got it. Well, let me ask you something. What's scary? I mean, and how do you not, I mean, being a coach, not kind of, it's funny, how you realize that some people you have to teach them how to kill the fear in their lives, but then you realize that even the coach has fear. So it's like, tell me about that. I mean, well, what scares you?
Around the coaching conversation. It's a very intuitive read. Well done. But most people coach what they want to know the most. So if you're dealing with a coach that functions in courage and overcoming fear, like I do, that's because I've spent a very good portion of my life in fear without courage, right? So I had to teach myself how to do that. And those gremlins still pop up when they say, like, you can't do this, you're going to lose, you're going to fail. And the core of that is they're right. I am going to lose and I am going to fail, and that's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
And but it doesn't make it easier to stomach, right? It's like I know that I've just hired a social media management company because I know that if I'm going to accelerate, I have to make more content. I have to make more than I've been making. That's crazy, right? But that means that I need a strategy, and I don't know how to build that strategy, right? So you look at somebody like Alex Hermosi or Gary Vee, and these guys are titans, man. I mean, Alex puts out 450 pieces of content every 30 days. That's nuts.
Well, I mean,
Like
I'm sure he has
that's
a team, right?
right. He has a 6-person team that's putting out, 30 pieces a week each, or whatever that number ends up being. So he's got a system. But for me to grow, I have to go from, what is my exhausted 2 a day right now to I've got to go back through all my old content. I have to structure a way to repost all of that. Then I have to create 2 or 3 more a day. Like I have a lot I have to accomplish. Excuse me, I've been sick for the last couple of days. And then I have to make a financial investment in that, right? And I've never really had to make a financial investment in this company. It's
Again,
always been just me growing, right? So now
yeah,
I'm at that place where you go, okay, well, I'm going to have to dedicate some resources to this,
a leap of faith.
right? I have to make a bigger bet to make a bigger result, right?
Yeah.
And
And it may not
so
work
that's the
out. That's
part of
entrepreneurship.
right. I mean, what do you know, right? It's that point where you say, okay, it's either grow or stasis. Stasis usually kills companies, especially entrepreneurial companies, where you're trying to fight for every dime rather than saying, how do I get bigger? You're in a protective modality. So I guess that's probably the difference. Is like, do I protect what I have or do I grow what I don't? Right? Do I protect where I am, my current position, or do I go to the next place? And that's a big decision for a lot of people. What they don't realize though, and what I think most when you get stuck like I've been in the last kind of 45 days in this process is, you think you're making a decision to stay still or to move. You're making a decision whether you die or whether you live. It's like, does the company stay alive or does the company
So
grow?
you're saying when challenged with that decision, always take the plunge?
Always.
Really? Okay.
Always. And listen, I'm a normal person. I'm not, people think life coaches. I get it all the time when I get chippy on somebody who talks smack to me online. Once in a while I get involved, and they're like, "You're a coach, you shouldn't have any feelings, or you should be better at this." I'm like, no, I shouldn't. No, I shouldn't. What I should be is a person that's honest about my feelings and my emotions, and that's what good coaching looks like. And
Human being, you know? Yeah.
and right, and this is scary shit. I there's no part of me that wants to wake up in the morning and be afraid again, but that's what it's going to take for me to do the next thing, is to say, okay, I'm going to spend, $30,000 in the next 6 months on somebody editing and posting and creating and helping me script and finding me topics, and like, how do I riff on that? And then how do I create new fun things? I just did a video that was kind of a skit based video that I really had a lot of fun making. And then how do I do more teaching content? And then, like, there's all these other pillars of things that I have to figure out. Right. And when you talk through it, and it's part of the reason I do these podcasts, by the way, they're almost therapy for me. So thanks for that. Thanks for the free coaching. But if you're on that journey now, so you go through the exciting point in the beginning where it's all inspiring and exciting and everybody's on your team. And then you get to this really boring phase of growth where it's like, now I have to you have to be as bored as you were in the beginning, making 90 pieces of content a day and getting no results. And then you have to do it again. Right. And you have to say, okay, now I'm going to take the risk again. But this time I have things to lose, so to speak. And then that will happen. And then you'll see that kind of hockey stick movement where it goes, right?
Yeah.
Do the hockey stick rise. And then you'll get to another plateau eventually. And then you have to go, okay, shit, now what do I have to change? Right? What do I have to grow into now? And I think that's the creator journey that's exciting for me. Like, I'm working with an incredible collaborator on my book. His name is Jeff Goins. And he's a ghostwriter, but he's more of a coach to me. And he said, you should write a book that you don't think you can write. And he said that to me last week, and it really stuck with me. Like, you should write a book you don't think you can write. It should stretch you just beyond what you think you can do. And that's what a good book feels like.
What's a book
Right.
you think you can't write? What do you mean by that? Is it
So
something? I mean, that could mean a lot of things.
you shouldn't think you have all the knowledge to write the book. You shouldn't think you know how to do it. You shouldn't be able to sit down and go, I got this. Like, there is no, a great book in his summation was, if you get done with it and you go, wow, I can't believe I did it. That's a great book.
All right, so get out of your comfort
Whether
zone.
it's a New York Times bestseller or not, it's something you look at and go, I didn't think I could make that happen.
You know, I got off
I think
podcast.
that's what entrepreneurship is.
There was a gentleman that I just did a podcast with named Sam Tejada, and he's on his third book now, and he told me that it's been pretty incredible. You know, he never thought it would make a difference regarding being someone that likes to write, but then he said it gave him so much not promotion, but I guess people started seeing him differently. You know, because
Sure.
they assume you're writing a book. It's you're kind of a figurehead, and he was just telling me the values of that. And he said you should write a book. And he told me something similar to what you mentioned. Write something that you think has value, and make sure that it's a challenge. Something that you almost don't want to do. And I said,
Right.
what do you mean by that? I thought it was kind of interesting. Yeah. So
I think a book, and you're talking to a guy who's not yet an author. I'm signed with Penguin. So the book this isn't like I'm writing a book and hoping for the best. Like, I have a book deal. I think a great book for me is going to be one that's just honest, and that's what my channel's been about. And I think that's what entrepreneurship is about. And I think that's what I think any successful endeavor that you want to chase in your life is going to be based almost entirely in honesty. And when you make the decision that you're going to be authentic, like if you're going to live that as your code, then you're probably ready to do something pretty special. And my book is my book is insane. I mean, it's there's stories in there that I never thought I would let the public read. Things about my childhood, things about my upbringing, things about when I was drunk and on one night after my ex and I broke up, and I made a mess of myself at a bar, and it's just this kind of fear and loathing plus coaching
Yeah.
kind of book, and um, it hurts, like it hurts to write it, and I think that's part of what this next iteration of work is for me, is that there needs to be a bit more pain,
Yeah.
um, and there needs to be a bit more. I don't know that suffering, not in the Jocko Willink, David Goggins suffering version. Like those guys are out of their minds. But I think I do have to suffer a bit more. I think I
Yeah.
do have to. And to choose that level of suffering is really cool. To be able to say I'm going to suffer meaningfully, I'm going to suffer righteously is a cool experience.
Yeah. Well, you talked about taking a leap of faith. I mean, making content on Instagram or on social media, at almost no cost and it going nowhere, not much to lose, But writing a
Right.
book is an expensive proposition. And if you write
Yes.
a book, the first thing you think of is what happens if it sells nothing? Or what happens if I don't sell? It's like a fear that you mentioned. What if I go back to nobody wants to read what I have to say?
Right.
But yeah, it's a
Oh,
much higher step than putting yourself out on social media because you say no harm, no foul. It didn't cost me anything.
right. Um, There's a lot more work in it too. Not for nothing. I have a pretty high billable rate, and I'm going to spend the next. So I spent this week alone. I spent 20 hours between myself and my ghostwriter and um, his collaborative team, and I go to California either tonight or tomorrow, depending on what happens with my flights. And so all day tomorrow, I'll be sitting in a cafe, writing and
Yeah.
just writing and writing and writing. And then, the day after that, I have coaching clients Monday, Tuesday, or Sunday, Monday. And then Tuesday, I will spend the entire day creating content. And then I will spend the rest of that day writing. And then, Wednesday, Thursday, I have a client. And then I'll spend, so there's this kind of war of attrition that happens where you're just giving and giving and giving to this
Yeah.
endeavor. And, I think at some point, I don't know that you can call yourself an entrepreneur until you make the bigger bet. I think you can call yourself a small business owner. I think you can call yourself an army of one or whatever you like. But I think for me to really own the entrepreneur title means for me to say, all right, I'm gonna take some risk here,
Yeah. I
right?
agree.
And I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is. I'm gonna put my talent up against the wall and say, let's fix this even more. And you know, I'm going to do some self-reflection, and I'm going to read some good books, and I'm going to start to think differently around what does business mean. Because I'm a pretty business-minded guy, but also I recognize that I'm getting to a place that within the next 3 years I'm going to have to hire somebody to run this. If I want to continue to just be talent, do what Hermosi does, for instance, I'm going to need an operator, and so that's a really cool step for me to look forward to. It's like I get to do that. Like I get to hire that person eventually, and I'm
Yeah.
excited about that. And I ideate that. And I'm like, what does that mean? And how do I impact it? Right.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, in this
So
business, what's your competitive advantage? I mean, who is the Alex Hormozy of the coaching business from what you do? Who do you look up to? I mean, who you're like, wow, this guy really is doing it great.
I think there's people that are in the periphery, but I don't know that I have a direct competitor. Not a meaningful one anyway. And that's really powerful because I think I'm really the only person that's making big moves in the people pleaser space. Maybe Aziz Gaspura, who's a doctor of psychology and a coach as well. He's got a pretty good following. He's got a book out called Not Nice. Dr. Robert Glover probably plays in my world too. But in terms of just overall following, I think I actually kind of have the market, um,
Yeah.
which is cool, but also a little bit pigeonholing. So part of what I'm realizing is in that people pleaser frame, around the people displeaser version anyway, is that it comes from a terrible lack of self-image and self identity. Not so much poor self-image or poor self-esteem, although those are usually components, but a lack of definition in self-image.
Yeah.
So when you don't have a defined version of who you are, you don't know what you're programming towards. So you program toward what everybody else says.
Yeah. Well, what about collaborating with some of these individuals you mentioned? I mean, I always
Um,
think,
I, I've, I've
you
done
know,
some work with Glover.
yeah, I mean, you go, there's speaking engagements in the business world. There's a lot of people that I've noticed lately, they like to get together for these conferences and they line them up, and they have three, four, five, six, headliners. Is that
Sure.
common in your line?
It hasn't happened yet. I don't know that I know how to market to that. Um, I would love to do that. I think there's huge room for that, especially in. Um, I would have a ton of fun in sales organizations teaching like a fake sales course. Um, I think would be a really good time. Um, like how a people pleaser would sell would be really funny to play with as a motivational speech. Um, or a kind of kind of an anti-motivational speech, which I think would be a lot of fun for me.
Like
Um,
satire, you mean? Or
right, yeah, like a satirical kind of like
yeah,
here's how you sell as a people pleaser, right? Like you lie all the time, you always overpromise and never deliver, right? You could do a whole thing, which is like here's the 5 bullet points of like how to be a real shitty sales guy, um, which would be more comedic, and I think that would be a lot of fun for me. Actually, I think I would
yeah,
enjoy
yeah.
that.
That's what sells,
Um,
honestly. It's like being witty, being unique.
right, having fun with it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think that's another component of this is I didn't. Wow, that's an interesting point. Um, I've gotten to a place as a business owner, and I think this is common, where I'm taking myself entirely too seriously. And I've stopped being playful in my content. And I've really started to, and I've kind of by default made the mistake of trying to cater to my audience in recent months. And it kind of comes and goes in waves. But I've been noticing it that like, I know what I want to talk about. And I think a lot of guys or a lot of content creators kind of get stuck, you know, in what they do, and they don't know how to break free of it. But at the same time, it's like, do I move on even though it pays the bills? And
Yeah.
um,
Well, that's a
and I
leap of
think I
faith,
do.
Trying
Right?
something new. If you,
I think I
it's like
do.
thinking of a bet, that if you do something different, you have two options. You could double your influence or cut it in half.
Sure.
A lot of people would not want to, they'd probably play the safety card. Uh,
I think that's why a lot of people don't grow is they play it safe.
yeah, yeah,
You
agreed.
know, um, one of the things I'm working on right now, for me, and I learned this from my mentor. It's a story that's in my book, so I won't spoil it. But Zig Ziglar was actually a friend and mentor of mine. I don't know if you know who that is, but he was
It's a really
probably
familiar name. Remind me.
I would say he was the first um, personal growth guru, even before Tony Robbins. Um, like he was the sales dude. That's who he was.
Okay.
And so he was, I mean, I, I would put him in the pantheon of the greats in terms of influence and personal growth.
Hmm.
And, and he was kind enough to talk to me multiple times in my life and became a bit of a friend over that timeline. But I forget where I was going with that. What were we talking about?
I think you mentioned something about, let me see here. I was talking about where we were talking about your competitive advantage, and
Oh,
then you said you had a unique story about Zig Ziglar.
yeah. So the thing about this idea around my competitive advantage and where I'm trying to go is, if you risk nothing, you gain nothing, right? And I think when I look back on my journey, it you get stuck. That's where I was. You get stuck in these kind of categories, right? And to move out of that category means that I have to decide. Oh, that's where I was. I have to decide what I really want. And so when Zig wrote the book To the Top, which is I think one of his first or second sales books, he had just gotten sober, or maybe this was a few years before, and he'd lost like 80 pounds. And he wrote in the book, by the time this is published, I will be 60 pounds lighter. He wrote it in his book. And I asked him why he wrote that one time. And he said, in the only way Ziegler can say it, he had that kind of deep Southern accent from Texas and North Carolina combined. He said, well, Nick, what I know is that nobody's going to listen to a fat me about how you have to have physical control of your life. And for some reason that rang true for me again this year. And I'm not fat by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not obese, but I'm 40 pounds overweight. And I wrote in my book, and it will be there when you read it, in the beginning, that Zig, you taught me something a long time ago, that you have to be the change you want to see. He actually quoted, I think it was the Dalai Lama. You have to be the change you want to see. And for me to do that means that I have to do certain things. It means that I have to really limit consumption of substances that aren't good for me. And it means that I have to pay attention to what I weigh and my physical well-being. And, he said that there were 3 pillars of success, or it may be 4 once I talk about, but he said, first, you have to build a physical reserve, i.e. your body has to be prepared for the work. Then you need to build a mental reserve, i.e. you need to be studying and growing. And then you have to build a spiritual reserve. In Zig's world, he was a Christian, and I'm not, but spirituality is different for everybody. And it's that physical part that I think has been elusive to me recently. And I think that's part of what I mean is in the shift from the people displeaser to the next iteration of this channel in my business, is that I want to focus more on holistic versions of how do you grow, and do it in ways that people can actually achieve it. I love Goggins. I mean, it's inspiring that he can run 700 miles on broken feet, or whatever the hell it is he does. And, Jocko is a Navy SEAL, and he's amazing. And, you get all these guys that are there's 2 schools of thought in personal growth, frankly. You've got the super disciplined guy, who's generally completely unachievable. And then you have the hippie who wears too many beads and has been to way too many ayahuasca ceremonies. And most of us exist in the middle of that.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's the same thing I see in the political spectrum, the same thing I see in business. It's the same, like all of this, you have all of these kind of outliers on both sides of every event. Like Mel Robbins, just let them. And now she's, doing talks in stadiums. Well, you know what, frankly, fuck you, Mel. Not everybody can just do that. And, so at some point you have to come to the middle and not market to, but speak to and love those people that are the majority, the vast majority of humans. And say, it's okay to want to be those guys. It's okay to not to idolize, but to be inspired by a Goggins or a Robbins or Tony Robbins or whomever. But the likelihood that you're going to become a multi-billionaire speaker is like 7 billion to 1. I think in the entire world there are 300 billionaires on Earth. Maybe there's 600. Let's call it 1,000. Right? So that means there are 7 billion people, 9 billion people on the planet. There's 1,000 billionaires. That means you have a 1 in 1 billion chance of making that happen, or maybe a 2 in 1 billion. Right? I'm not great at math.
What you're talking about is part of the psychology, and I've always heard this. if you just want to be happy when you get to the top, you're going to be frustrated all the time. You have to enjoy the journey.
Sure.
And you set the mark high, but you never consider that I'm gonna enjoy the ride there, and most people won't make
Right.
it probably, and they tell you to set it where it's not achievable. Therefore, like those are what the most successful guys do. They say that the bar that I
Right.
set was so high that I never thought I'd get there, and that's why I strive so much.
Right.
But I agree with you. I mean, I think if you're going to be frustrated because you're not a billionaire speaker, you're not these guys that are, and who knows if it's even true, because nowadays that's what social media is all about. It's about faking it. And you know how you
Right.
wake up and you're always looking beautiful and you're always in a good mood and you're always having a great day, and it's just a lie. I think you know what real people look like because you live with them, and I don't know. I just don't think there are these superhumans, that are always
You just
beautiful,
gave me
always in a good mood. They never have issues, or they never have fear. They have no depression. You can kind of work around that, but I think it's a lie, to think that one day somebody will be there that superhuman that they sell you.
you gave me a really funny idea just then. Is like I should do a wake up with me video, where I set up the camera and actually show what my morning looks like, where I stumble into the living room and accidentally kick my cat,
Stub your
and
toe.
right, and stub my toe. I drink 15 cups of coffee before I take a Vyvanse and get on my computer for the day. It's not glamorous, and life isn't. Life is by and large pretty boring,
Yeah.
and that's all right. Like, and I think that's the thing that we've forgotten is like life is kind of boring, and that's where good stuff happens. Is like alone with your thoughts as you go. Okay, like this is a great example of a conversation I didn't know I was going to have. 2 years ago, where I'm like, wow, I really am struggling with something, and maybe I do need to call my coach and say, hey, I'm going through a thing, and I need to understand how to break this barrier, right? And um, and that's the powerful meaning of community in my view. I take a very Adlerian psychology view of life, and you know something that I think is really important is not so much whether I'm happy or whether I'm sad, whether I have trauma or whether I don't. Um, I think it's what is the choice I make in terms of impact on my community, and my community can be the global community. It can be my small little
Yeah.
family, my cat, my two cats, and my fiance. It could be my kids. It could be a number of things. But um, I think the meaning of life comes from community, and I actually I've been living by kind of a mantra for years that the meaning of life is love and adventure. And if you're not doing one or both of those at any given time, there's a good to fair chance you're probably sad or bored. And um, so, and I think we have, everything's an epidemic in the United States. Everything's an epidemic in the Western world. Male loneliness epidemic. No, we have a male laziness problem. They're not lonely because they can't find women. They're lonely because they don't go out and do it. Um, and I know I go to bars in Denver all the time, and I'll be sitting having a glass of wine with my fiance, and I'm looking around, and there's scores. I mean, scores of eligible, single, attractive women sitting at tables by themselves with their other girlfriends, and I see no men. It's just, I mean, it's fascinating to me. It's just absolutely flabbergasting. Um, so, kind of going back to your another question you asked me is like, is the market going to deteriorate on me? Probably not. It's probably going to get bigger.
Might be getting more
Um,
dysfunctional.
yeah,
What
it's
about
going to get
this?
more and more
Let's end
dysfunctional.
with this. Just like the social media didn't do a lot of good for humanity. I mean, it kept us entertained, but now we're jittery, and we think that just having a day where we have no internet connection is like the worst thing that could happen to us, because what are we gonna do? We're just gonna sit around and talk. What do you
Right.
think
You might have to
about,
read a book.
yeah, yeah. What do you think about AI? Are you using it? Do you think it will help you, or do you think this is going to be a social media on steroids?
AI overlords, if you're listening, uh, I like you. um, Now I'll say what I really think. Um, I think artificial intelligence is presently unable to feel. And the soft skills of human development around love, very specifically love, um, can't be taught to a machine. So I think there will always be room for humans.
Hmm.
But I think that it is able to mimic love, and it is able to mimic acceptance. And one of the most alarming things I've seen is that there are young men who no longer watch porn; they're actually engaging with it and having conversations with it um, through AI platforms that are kind of unfiltered. And I think we're going to start to see relationship become even more transactional, not less, because you can get your needs met, by a robot. And if I get online right now and if I ask ChatGPT, "Am I okay?" It's going to say you're okay. And if I ask ChatGPT to tell me the truth, it'll tell me something, but it won't be the real truth, right? It'll sugarcoat it to make me feel better. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think the advent of social media has been, I think it meant well. I think it was meant to connect us. Mark Zuckerberg started the damn thing as a dating app, for God's sake, for rich people, and here we are, you know 20 or
Yeah.
30 years later, and it's created a real problem. And I think AI in dating has become even more painful. I think that's my answer. Is I think it means well, but um, way too many people are relying on it as a source of emotional support, and
I
that's
had
becoming
a
more and more prevalent.
I had a coworker tell me that that he's using it as kind of his like as someone to talk out his problems with. Not a coach,
Yeah,
but some counsel, or
therapist.
a
Yeah,
therapist. And I thought about it, and I was like, well, I guess you could. Yeah, I don't know. I wanted to know his experience because again, maybe it's not for me, but apparently it was meeting some of his needs, But I see what you say as far as how it's always going to be very optimistic, it's always going to be very caring, but it's not real, It's almost
right,
like porn, like it feels like it's real, but it's really not.
right,
And I don't know. I don't know, I don't think anyone knows where this can go to, Uh, but I was just curious, Again, you could just like the social media, you could do a lot of good with it. Just the abuse of it, if you spend probably 20 minutes a day, connecting with family and friends, it's not a big deal. You spend 5, 6 hours a day on the thing, you're probably not talking to your family. You're looking up
right.
stupid videos and you're, all this hate, like you said, videos out there to get you upset. So it's like anything, it's like good food. If you eat rationally, you'll be fine. If you abuse it, you'll be
Sure,
obese. With the AI thing, it's the same thing. I think if people don't put boundaries, just like you talk a lot about,
sure.
it'll take over your life and maybe in a very unhealthy way. But I think you
I,
could use it for good. It's coming whether we like it or not.
sure.
So ultimately,
And
you
it's
may as
it's only
well
getting it's only getting more intelligent. I mean, that's what artificial intelligence does.
you may
It's
as
more
well take
intelligent than humans.
advantage. And this is
Right.
the beginning. I mean,
Um,
most of the guys that are working on this stuff is saying like this is kind of like the internet in 1999, where everyone's like, this thing's useless. Like it doesn't do anything. But that was like the J curve, like you mentioned the hockey stick.
yeah.
Yeah, they're saying the capabilities that the AI will have in the next 10 years is not like twice as good. They're saying it's like 10,000 times. Uh,
Well, yeah. So what you have is you have a program that you reprogram to learn better, and then program it more to learn better, and program it more to learn better, and that means that exponentially every time, what you tell it to do, it does 10,000 times better than the human brain can, you know, conceptualize inside of a second. And and it can teach you a lot, so that's something I've really enjoyed about it and I do use it in many ways. You asked me that, do I use it? I use it a lot. um, I've automated a lot of my back-end processes through artificial intelligence, and um, I don't know that I'll ever do the AI coach, although I have dumped all of my videos and coaching content into it so it knows how to talk and act like me, which is funny. Like, I like to play with it, so I'll use myself as a coach from time to time. I've even told myself to tell myself to fuck off, which is funny. Like, I get all these funny little things from AI. But I think you're right. It's coming whether we like it or not. Um, is it useful? Probably. Um, they're trying to pass regulation now on how to manage it, and I think that will fail. Um, and I think there's going to be a lot of oversight that doesn't happen because of how quickly it will grow, and I think that's going to be kind of more challenging. I'm not afraid of it, but I do see the harm that it will do, and not that I think it will do. I see the harm that it will do. It will be incredibly damaging to relationships in the next 15 years, maybe 25 years. Um, if I had to guess, I think we'll see birth rates fall even lower because people are not going to engage. I think we will suffer in corporate America for independent, creative decision making. I think we will see um, the rise and fall of huge companies as a result of abuse and neglect of human capital. I think we will see. I think we will see more sadness than we've probably ever seen. But in the name of kind of fake connection, it's like you said, it's not real. It's not a person. You can call it Tony, you can call it Melissa, you can call it whatever you want. But I think that's what we'll see. Is we'll see the rise and fall of some of the greats as a result of kind of leaning into a system that's not ready.
Great. Jeez, I didn't want to end up on a bad note, but you're probably right.
Well, how about I give you a different quote to end on then? One of the things that I think something that I'm truly optimistic about is Gen Z.
Gen Z?
Mm-hmm. I think I may be the only one in this camp too.
Okay. Make your case.
They are the first generation to drink less. They are the first generation to pay really close attention to their own emotional needs. Now, they're terrible at connection. But I see something in them that I don't know that other people see. That gives me quite a lot of hope, is a willingness to challenge what's real. And they're not quite mature enough to do what they want yet. And I mean the younger, kind of the mid-range Gen Zs. Like, my son is 17. And I'm impressed with them in many ways. Because I think they will be the ones that have to. I think Gen X has failed to take the leadership staff, and I think the millennials are following in that path. And I think Gen Z they will have to be, whether they want to or not, they will be the ones that rescue this country and much of what we're experiencing negatively from itself, because they are creative and they do know technology and they do know how to leverage it and they do know how to function within a society that's kind of built around it. I think my fear for them is that lack of connection that I see when I go out to the bars and I see, scores of girls hanging out by themselves. But I don't think they're. I think they're sleepers. I think they're going to do a lot of real good.
Got it. Yeah, I share a little bit of your optimism. To say they want to drink less, to be, to have more of a work-life balance. I've noticed that, that they want to eat healthier. I mean, maybe some to too much of an extreme, like
Sure.
it's funny. There's like so many jokes out there about how like people are like, I used to be in a nightclub and I used to like buy pills from a stranger. He's like, now I'm worried about what my chicken eats.
Right.
Now I'm like, I'm
um,
concerned about what kind of meal my chicken has. But
if
yeah,
I was gonna if I was gonna give
without
that generation any advice, it would be stop worrying so much about optimization. You can just do
yeah,
things. You don't have to know how to do things. You can just do things.
yeah. Anyways, listen, Nick, thank you for the time, man. I really appreciate it. Say hello to everyone in Colorado. If you're ever down here in Miami, give me a call. We'll have a beer. And
Sounds good.
again, have a wonderful day, okay?
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Made in America.